Hello, and welcome to Lila's Lullabies, where we spend time exploring with Lyla, a traveler who wanders the world at her own pace, while sharing her most enriching and restorative moments with you. In tonight's story, we'll join Lyla and her friends as they experience the amazing natural beauty of Yellowstone National Park. There's nowhere you need to be. Nothing you need to remember. Just settle in, get comfortable, and let yourself go. We're so glad you're here. Whenever you're ready, let's begin. The September morning in West Yellowstone was crisp and cool, and Lyla met her friend in the hotel lobby. Claire was standing, arms crossed, looking skeptical. "I still maintain that we should have gone to Seattle," she said. "Seattle has coffee shops and restaurants with Michelin stars and buildings." "Seattle also has rain," Marina pointed out. "Yeah, today we're getting wilderness and geysers and wildlife," Josie said. "I like wildlife," Claire said. "Nature shows on TV are very interesting, and there is a 0% incidence of animals coming through the screen." "You're going to love it," Beth promised. "Nature is good for the soul." "My soul prefers room service," Claire muttered, but she followed them out to meet their guide. The friendship between the five of them, Lyla, Marina, Beth, Claire, and Josie, went back to college days and shared apartments and late-night conversations that had solved the world's problems. Life had scattered them across different cities, different careers, different paths. But the bond had remained, and these days, the glue were these meetups, when they each took turns choosing an amazing global location. Although they usually visited more city destinations, today's focus was Yellowstone National Park. They were all in, except maybe Claire, who would need some convincing. They took a rideshare to the west entrance, where the tour guide was waiting in the parking lot with his vehicle, a large open-top SUV that looked ready for adventure. He was a man in his 50s with a weathered face and a ready smile, wearing a park ranger-style uniform. "Good morning. I'm Tom, and I'll be showing you Yellowstone today. You must be my 9 o'clock group." They introduced themselves, and Tom helped them into the SUV. Claire eyed the open top dubiously. "What if it rains?" "Then we get wet," Tom said cheerfully, "but the forecast is clear. Beautiful day for Yellowstone." They drove through the west entrance, and Tom immediately launched into his welcome speech as they entered the park. Yellowstone is the world's first national park, established in 1872. It sits on top of a supervolcano, which is why we have all the geothermal features: geysers, hot springs, mud pots. The volcano is active but not erupting, before you ask. Last eruption was about 640,000 years ago. We're probably fine. "Probably?" Claire said. The group chuckled. "Statistically speaking, you're more likely to be hit by a bison," Tom said, "which brings me to rule number 1, don't approach the wildlife. They look calm, but they're wild animals. Bison can run 35 miles per hour, and they will charge. Elk will kick. Bears will be bears. Stay at least 25 yards from everything, 100 yards from bears and wolves." "I don't think Claire will have trouble obeying that restraining order," Lyla said with a smile. Their first stop was the Grand Prismatic Spring in the Midway Geyser Basin. Even from the parking lot, they could see the steam rising from the thermal features, the air smelling faintly of sulfur. "This smell is hydrogen sulfide," Tom explained. "You'll get used to it. Small price to pay for seeing one of the most spectacular sights on Earth." They followed the boardwalk that wound through the geyser basin, steam rising all around them. Smaller hot springs bubbled in steam, their colors ranging from clear blue to milky white to rust orange. And then they saw Grand Prismatic Spring. "Oh," Josie breathed. Lyla stopped walking, completely arrested by the sight. The spring was enormous, over 370 feet in diameter, and brilliantly colored in a way that seemed impossible, like something from another planet. The center was a deep, almost ultramarine blue, so pure and intense it looked artificial. But this was entirely natural, just water and sky and heat creating something extraordinary. The blue faded gradually to turquoise at the edges, then shifted through bands of green, first emerald, then lime, then a yellow-green that reminded her of new spring leaves. Beyond that, the colors deepened into gold, then burnt orange, then a rust red at the very edges where the water met the white mineral deposits that surrounded the spring like a frame. Steam rose continuously from the surface, thick white clouds that drifted across the spring, sometimes obscuring the colors entirely, then clearing to reveal them again in a constantly shifting display. The steam caught the morning light, glowing, creating an ethereal atmosphere that made the whole scene feel dreamlike. The scale was overwhelming. Standing at the edge, Lyla couldn't see the far side clearly through the steam, just hints of color and movement, the sense of something vast and powerful and utterly indifferent to human presence. "It's the third largest hot spring in the world," Tom said. "The colors come from different types of bacteria that thrive at different temperatures. The center is too hot for anything to live, over 180 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's clear blue, just reflecting the sky. As you move toward the edges where it's cooler, different bacteria create the different colors." "It looks like a rainbow," Marina said, taking photos. "More like a living painting," Lyla said, still staring at the spring. "The way the colors blend into each other, there's no hard line between them, just this gradual shift. And the steam keeps changing everything, making it dynamic. It's never the same view twice." "It's one of the most photographed features in the park," Tom said, "and for good reason. Want to get a better view? There's a trail up the hillside. Bit of a climb, but worth it." The hike up was steep but manageable, switchbacking up the hillside through lodgepole pines. Claire lagged behind, complaining good-naturedly. "This is exercise," she said. "No one mentioned exercise." "It's a short hike," Beth called back. "You can do it." From the overlook at the top, the view was spectacular. The entire Grand Prismatic Spring was visible, the colors even more vivid from above, the steam creating an ethereal atmosphere. Beyond it, the Midway geyser basin spread out, steam rising from multiple thermal features. "Okay," Claire admitted, "this is worth the climb." "Told you," Beth said. They took their time at the overlook, and Tom pointed out other features visible in the basin, explaining the geology and the hydrothermal system beneath Yellowstone. "The whole park is essentially a giant plumbing system," he said. "Water seeps down through cracks in the rock, gets heated by the magma chamber below, then rises back up. Where it comes up fast, you get geysers. Where it comes up slower, you get hot springs. Where it bubbles through mud, you get mud pots. It's all connected underground. Back at the SUV, they continued deeper into the park. The landscape was varied and constantly changing as they drove. Dense forests of lodgepole pine gave way to open meadows, then back to forest, then suddenly to rivers and lakes that reflected the sky like mirrors. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still holding last winter's snow despite it being September. And everywhere, woven through the green landscape, were the ghostly gray trunks of trees killed in the 1988 fires, standing dead, bleached by sun and weather, creating an eerie but strangely beautiful contrast with the living forest around them. Lyla watched the landscape roll past, fascinated by the evidence of fire and regeneration existing side by side. Among the gray, dead trees, young lodgepoles grew thick and healthy, some already 10 or 15 feet tall. Wildflowers bloomed in the clearings the fire had created, purple lupine and Indian paintbrush in brilliant red-orange, taking advantage of the sunlight that now reached the forest floor. The destruction and renewal were happening simultaneously, the old forest making way for the new, death-feeding life in the endless cycle. The fires were controversial at the time, Tom explained, noticing Lila's attention to the burned areas. People thought the park was being destroyed. The lodgepole pines need fire to reproduce. Their cones are serotinous, sealed with resin that only melts at high temperatures. The fire released seeds and created space for new growth. Look around. All these young pines, they're from post-fire regeneration. The forest is healthier now. It's like the forest planned for it, Lyla said, built fire into its life cycle. Exactly, Tom said, pleased. Fire isn't the enemy here. It's part of the system. Always has been. They drove through Hayden Valley, a wide-open area along the Yellowstone River. Tom slowed the vehicle, and ahead they could see a herd of bison, dozens of them, grazing peacefully in the grass. There's your wildlife, Tom said quietly. Bison are the largest land mammal in North America. Bulls can weigh 2,000 pounds. They look slow, but remember, they can outrun you. They watched the bison from the safety of the vehicle, the massive animals completely unconcerned with the human observers. A few were wallowing in dust, others grazing, calves staying close to their mothers. They're so big, Josie said. Photos don't capture the scale. Nothing quite compares to seeing them in person, Tom agreed. As they drove on, Tom pointed out a grizzly bear in the distance, a dark shape moving through the grass. He pulled out binoculars and passed them around so everyone could get a better look. Grizzlies are one of Yellowstone's success stories, he said. They were nearly extinct in the park by the 1970s. Intensive conservation efforts brought them back. Now we have around 150 in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Their next stop was the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone, and when they reached the overlook, everyone fell silent. The canyon was massive, a deep gash in the earth carved by the Yellowstone River over thousands of years. But what struck Lyla most was the color. The canyon walls weren't the typical reds and browns of other canyons she'd seen. They were yellow and orange and pink and cream, a pastel palette that seemed too delicate for something so massive and powerful. The colors varied from section to section, some walls nearly white, others deep orange, some streaked with sulfur yellow, all of it glowing in the midday sun. The lower falls plunged 308 feet at the head of the canyon, a white column of water that seemed to fall in slow motion from this distance, though she knew it was actually crashing down with tremendous force. The roar of the falls was constant, a deep rumble that she could feel in her chest as much as hear. Mist rose from where the water hit the pool at the base, creating rainbows in the spray, adding another layer of color to the already vibrant scene. The Yellowstone River snaked through the bottom of the gorge, a ribbon of green-blue water moving swiftly between the colored walls. From this height, over 1,000 feet above the river, the canyon's scale became apparent. Trees growing on the canyon floor looked like tiny shrubs. The river, which she knew was wide and powerful, looked like a creek. The whole scene had a model-like quality, as if she were looking at a miniature rather than a real landscape, her brain unable to quite process the actual size of what she was seeing. "The yellow rocks are why the park is called Yellowstone," Tom said. "Hydrothermal activity altered the rhyolite, turning it yellow and orange. The canyon is about 20 miles long and up to 200 feet deep." They walked along the rim trail, stopping at various overlooks. Each viewpoint offered a different perspective: the falls from above, the canyon from the side, the river snaking through the bottom of the gorge. "This is incredible," Lyla said. "The power of the water, the scale of the canyon, it's humbling." "Nature has a way of putting things in perspective," Tom agreed. They had a picnic lunch at one of the overlooks, sandwiches and fruit Tom had brought, eaten while watching the falls and the canyon. The September sun was warm, the air clean and fresh, the sound of the falling water constant. "I'll admit," Claire said, eating her sandwich, "this is better than a restaurant." "The view helps," Lyla added, gesturing at the canyon, "though I keep trying to wrap my head around the time scale." Tom said thousands of years to carve this, but the rock itself is hundreds of thousands of years old, and it all sits on a volcano that's been active for millions of years. That's so many human lifetimes, it's hard to imagine. "That's geology for you," Tom said. "The time scales are incomprehensible. Humans have been here for the blink of an eye, relatively speaking." After lunch, they drove to the Upper Geyser Basin, home to Old Faithful and the highest concentration of geysers in the park. Tom parked and they walked through the basin on the boardwalk, passing geyser after geyser, hot springs, steam vents. "There are more geysers in Yellowstone than in the rest of the world combined," Tom said. "Over 500 geysers in the park. The Upper Geyser Basin has the most, including the most predictable, Old Faithful. They watch several smaller geysers erupt: Beehive, Castle, Grand, each one spectacular in its own way. The variety was remarkable. Some erupted in tall jets, others in wide sprays, some with steam and some with water, some predictable and some completely random. The geothermal features are constantly changing," Tom explained. "Earthquakes can alter the underground plumbing. Some geysers stop erupting, others start. Some hot springs drain, new ones appear. Yellowstone is dynamic. It's alive in a way that's different from other parks." As the afternoon wore on, they made their way to Old Faithful. Tom checked the predicted eruption time. The geyser was due to erupt in about 30 minutes. "Old Faithful isn't the biggest or the most spectacular geyser," Tom said, "but it's the most predictable. It erupts roughly every 90 minutes, give or take. It's been doing this for as long as we've been observing it." They found seats on the benches that surrounded the geyser, joining the crowd of visitors waiting for the show. The September sun was lowering toward the horizon, the light turning golden. "This is nice," Marina said. "Just sitting, waiting for nature to blow a fuse. On schedule." "In that way, it's kind of like my ex," Josie said with a smirk. Her friends laughed. "The light is perfect right now," Lyla said, looking around at the geyser basin. The late afternoon sun was hitting the steam from all the various thermal features, turning it golden. The steam rose in columns and sheets, drifting across the landscape, catching the light and glowing. Behind them, the sun was painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and ahead, Old Faithful's cone sat in shadow, waiting. The combination of the golden steam, the colorful sky, and the dark silhouettes of the pine forests in the distance created a scene that looked almost staged, too perfect to be real. Even the crowd of waiting visitors seemed to sense it. Conversations had dropped to murmurs, everyone watching the light show as much as waiting for the geyser. They watched the geyser's cone, seeing occasional puffs of steam. Tom explained what they were seeing. Small preliminary eruptions, signs that the pressure was building underground. "Any minute now," he said. And then it began. Water shot up from the cone, first just a few feet, then higher, then suddenly the full eruption. A column of water reaching 130 feet into the air, the spray catching the late afternoon light and creating rainbows. The crowd applauded and cheered. The eruption continued for several minutes, the column rising and falling, steam and water mixing, the roar of it audible even over the crowd noise. "That's incredible," Claire said, actually smiling. "Better than the Bellagio." The eruption finally subsided, the column shrinking until it was just steam and then nothing. The geyser went quiet, already beginning to refill and rebuild pressure for the next eruption. 90 minutes from now, it'll do it again," Tom said. "And 90 minutes after that. It's been doing this for longer than any of us have been alive, and it'll keep doing it long after we're gone." They sat for a while longer, watching the sunset colors deepen, the other visitors gradually dispersing. Tom was in no rush, content to let them enjoy the moment. "Thank you for today," Beth said to him. "You made the park come alive with all your stories and knowledge." "That's my job," Tom said, "and my pleasure. Yellowstone is magic. I never get tired of sharing it with people. Every group sees it differently, responds to different things. That's what makes it special for me." The sun was touching the horizon now, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The steam from Old Faithful and the other geysers caught the light, glowing in the evening air. The temperature was dropping quickly, the September evening turning cool. "We should head back," Tom said finally. "Getting dark soon, and the wildlife is more active at dusk. Don't want to surprise a bison on the road." They climbed back into the SUV, and Tom drove them back toward the west entrance, taking his time, pointing out elk grazing in a meadow, showing them where wolves had been spotted that morning, explaining the ecosystem and how everything connected. Once they left the west gate, Tom suggested he drive them the extra 5 minutes to their hotel, and the group agreed. They thanked him profusely, tipped him generously, and watched as he drove off into the Yellowstone evening. "That was amazing," Josie said. "Completely amazing." "I'll admit it," Claire said. "This was better than Seattle." "Can we get that in writing?" Marina asked. "Don't push it." They headed up to their rooms to clean up, agreeing to meet for dinner in 30 minutes. Lyla took a quick shower, washing off the day's dust and sunscreen, then settled by the window to wait. From here, she could see the edge of Yellowstone, the dark forests, the mountains in the distance, the first stars appearing in the deepening blue sky. The town of West Yellowstone was quiet, just a small cluster of buildings on the edge of wilderness. She thought about the day, the impossible colors of Grand Prismatic Spring, the massive bison in Hayden Valley, the power of the lower falls, the regular clockwork of Old Faithful. The scale of it all, the raw geology on display, the reminder that the planet had its own rhythms and systems that operated entirely independent of human presence. Tom's words came back to her, that nature put things in perspective. It was true. Standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, watching water that had been falling for thousands of years, seeing geothermal features powered by a volcano that had been active for millions of years. It made human concerns feel smaller, temporary, less urgent. But it also made beauty feel more important, the way the light caught the spray from Old Faithful, the colors of Grand Prismatic Spring, the peaceful grazing of the bison. These things existed whether humans were there to see them or not, but witnessing them felt like a privilege, like being let in on a secret. Even Claire had been won over by the end, her skepticism transformed into genuine appreciation. Sometimes the best experiences were the ones you had to be talked into, the ones that pushed you outside your comfort zone. The evening was fully arrived now, the sky dark except for a band of orange at the horizon. Lyla heard voices in the hallway, her friends ready for dinner, already debating where to eat and what the next day's adventure should be. She stood, taking one more look out at Yellowstone in the gathering darkness, the wilderness that had been protected since 1872, that would continue long after all of them, that offered anyone willing to visit it the chance to witness something larger and older and more enduring than themselves. Tomorrow they'd explore more, maybe see the northern part of the park, or perhaps just wander West Yellowstone's small downtown. But tonight, Lyla carried the gift of this day, Grand Prismatic's rainbow, the bison's stolid presence, the falls' endless roar, Old Faithful's reliable eruption, and Claire's reluctant conversion to the Church of Wilderness, all of it witnessed together, all of it made better by being shared with friends who could appreciate both grandeur, humor, and love, even without room service.